Well, I'm delighted to welcome today's guest interviewee for UK cigar scene, Marc Sinden. Marc, welcome.
Hello.
Marc is an actor on film and on stage. He's also a producer, a director, and part of a theatrical dynasty. He's also a cigar lover. So I wanted to ask Marc, really, where do you remember your very first cigar?
My very first cigar? Yes, I rather enjoyed having a cigar after a first night.
Okay.
So it was a great treat for me. And I used to take myself off to Davidoff, and I used to buy Don Ramos, which I think is a Nicaraguan.
Okay. Yeah.
Not very expensive, but it was always a Churchill.
Right.
There was something about the size. There's something, is the word manual dexterity? You know, it's to do with the touch and the feel. And
yes.
I rather enjoyed that. So you're going to have to forgive me. I'm getting over bronchitis.
Okay, no problem.
Which is irritating.
Huh.
So I always had a cigar after a first night as an actor. Then, as a producer, I realized I could afford better cigars.
Right.
And I always had one on a first night then. And then it became much more regular. And I would suddenly say, maybe first day of rehearsal as well. Or actually the third day of rehearsal. And then lunch break in between the 8th day of rehearsal. So it suddenly took over. And I would smoke cigars quite a lot. As a director on film, yes, it's something to fiddle with and to have in your hand. And all this nonsense about not being able to smoke indoors. So now I do as much as possible shooting on location.
Okay, and then you can sit. But there's also that great sort of the great vision of a director sort of sitting in one of those nice high up chairs with a big cigar. It must be something for the director should have almost.
I've yet to achieve the chair.
Okay. Yes, with your name on the back.
Most time it's a deck chair, and you're sitting there right next to the camera, going freezing. Why is it we always do summer shoots in the depths of winter, and these poor actors are wearing almost nothing, and the rest of the crew are North Face coats
wrapped up. So today you're enjoying a Churchill again, Ohio Churchill. What is it that
double
draws
Corona?
Double Corona. I'm sorry, double Corona. You're correct. What is it that draws you to a particular cigar, to that particular cigar, for example?
Rather like driving a car, I think you start with a Morris Minor, and suddenly you realise that it's not just getting A to B. And you go, actually, you know what I'd love? I'd love a bit of leather on the seat, or I'd like an automatic, not a manual, and you just go up the chain, basically. And from advice, somebody put me onto Cigars Limited, the well-known European website for cigars, and through that, I think probably because he saw that I was buying an excessive amount, I got to know Mitchell Orchant.
Right.
Of course, as you know, runs Cigars. And we became great friends, and his advice has been extraordinary. So suddenly he would suggest you try this, try that. And he got me onto Upmann's, which are just delicious.
Yeah.
Then I have to say he got me onto Hoya de Monterey, and that's, I've stopped there at the moment. I read, now was it in UK cigar scene? I can't remember. There was a very interesting discussion about Cohiba.
Right.
And is it just the brand? I mean, their branding is magnificent.
Yes.
It's like Coca-Cola.
Yes.
They are the best branding you can think of. Are they the best cigar? I leave that out there.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, it's a very it's an interesting question, isn't it? And I often like to think it's great that Cohiba are out there, because there are an awful lot of people who smoke Cohiba who leave an awful lot of other cigars for the rest of us to enjoy.
Totally.
And the lovely thing is always to find something that's aged, that's been forgotten, I always think.
I think you're quite right. But on the other hand, you get people somebody says, "Oh, I'll buy my boyfriend a cigar," and they get a Cohiba.
Yes.
The sadness of that is either puts them off for life, or they're made because they're quite strong. You know.
Yes, I mean there are different brands, so there are different ranges within. So yes, but if you pick the right one, they can be absolutely sublime.
Yeah.
But yes, but it's.
I think it's a very grown-up one to start with.
Yes.
That's
yes, that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
I'd say.
No, it can be. If you pick the wrong one, it could most certainly, most certainly put you off.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So tell me a little more about your relationship, because I'm fascinated by this. But your relationship with your cigar merchant and how that's grown. So you go to Mitch for
I go
advice
to
and
quite regularly.
Yeah.
We sit and chat, often about nothing, but often I want a new humidor, or I want a box of cigars, what would be good for laying down.
Yeah.
I trust his advice hugely.
Right.
I'm quite sure anyone would have exactly the same if you came here to Dunhill. You know, you'd end up having a relationship with your cigar merchant.
Yes.
But in a funny sort of way, it's rather like your hairdresser. Believe it or not, I have a hairdresser. Or your tailor.
Yeah.
And it's one of the last bastions. I mean, this program goes out everywhere, but just up the road from where we are is Jermyn Street, which is probably the last bastion of a gentleman's street.
Yes. Yes.
Virtually, I mean, 9.5 out of 10 are men's shops.
That's right.
And it's Pong or boots or shirts or suits or and of course Davidoff.
Yeah.
And Beretta for guns. You know, I mean, there's an extraordinary thing. So it's a very gentleman street, and to have a relationship with your cigar merchant is actually terribly important. I would. It's very easy if you want a packet of Woodbine to pop into a corner shop and buy a fag. You know, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a stick of exquisite pleasure.
Yeah.
So nobody just pops it, I'll have that one. You know, you look at it, and if a cigar merchant said, just like we did here today, so actually we've got some rather interesting ones.
Yes.
You go, yes, I'll trust him, because the genius of the good cigar merchants, he knows he's going to get you back again.
And he knows his stock.
Totally.
And totally. Knows, and that's the point. I always say, you've got something like a D4, and you look at the bottom of a box of D4 in the UK, and if they're more than a year or 2 years old, you'll be amazed because they turn over so quickly. Yeah. But finding something somewhere at the bottom of a humidor or somewhere in a humidor which has got 7 or 8 years age, and which has been aged by the tobacconist, by your cigar merchant, properly, it's just a delight.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and how do you find that? How are you finding that? So that's a 2001. Comes from the Revisado program. So
delicious, very soft, very mild, like gentle rain. Really perfect.
And so you're a sort of a light or a medium, light medium cigar.
Light to medium.
Man,
light to medium.
Right.
I'm not mad on the stronger ones. Every so often it's nice to have a kick.
Yeah.
But this, it's what gets you through the night, isn't it? This gives me great pleasure.
Yeah.
And so why I don't see the need to suddenly rush out to try something else when I know you'll attack me and say I'm completely wrong because I should be going out trying something else. I found something that I adore, and I'll wait a bit until I try something else. Does that make sense?
No, it does, absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, I try a number of different cigars because of what I do, but I do come back to my favourites. I do think it's important to try other things because there are an awful lot of cigars out there that have there are brands of cigars that to a certain extent are forgotten or lost. You know, Sancho Panza Diplomatico, again generally lighter cigars, but that aren't generally smoked. The Alejandro Robina, the Robina too, Vegas Robina, lighter cigars, but again, because they're not regularly smoked, you'll often find they're the ones with 6 or 7 years of age on them.
And the Upman
and
Corona,
delight.
which seems to have disappeared. I got a box of those, and they're delicious.
Now that's always the difficult thing, though, isn't it? When you have just that last box.
Do you open it?
Yes. And what do you do? And I always find once I start a box, it's much easier just to pick that. I'll have another one out of there.
I know.
When it's a new box.
I know. I mean, ideally, I should just put it away somewhere and just go. No.
Well, yeah, but you've got to smoke them sometime, haven't you?
Exactly.
The secret is just to put is when you're starting it, is to know that there's another one coming up behind.
But it's like that bottle of Merlot that you're keeping for a special occasion, isn't
Yes.
it? And you go, when is this damn special occasion?
So, in your profession, do you smoke a cigar as a relaxation or as a distraction from
You're
what's
talking about
going
me
on?
personally?
Yes.
Distraction. I smoke a cigar because I love it. There are a great many smokers in my business. I think a lot of it is to do with nerves. I think people, smoke urgently.
Yeah.
And for that reason, cigarette smoking is predominant. You cannot have a quick cigar. It defeats the entire object.
Yes.
A cigar is meant to be savoured and loved like a woman, and you just spend your time with it and enjoy it. A fag is quick, urgent shoot of nicotine. You will see an enormous amount of actors suddenly diving out of the stage door going, having a quick fag.
Right.
Cigar smoking, I suppose it's still regarded as expensive and elitist, isn't it? I don't quite mean elitist, but what's not quite elite? The top end.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not talking about aristocracy, I'm talking about something else, but it's still seen as unusual. I mean, people comment on the fact that I smoke cigars.
Right.
They wouldn't comment on the fact you're smoking a cigarette.
Yes. Yes.
Unless for political reasons.
Yes.
Small
Yeah.
p.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? Interesting. It's and so you started. So you started smoking cigars, really sort of as a celebratory thing, I suppose, at the end of after a first night.
After a first night, and just for the fun, and for the show. I'll certainly admit that.
Lovely, lovely. And I look back over your resume, and you've worked with some very interesting people in your time. And I picked two or three things out that you've done. You've produced and directed Stephen Burkoff, who must be an interesting. Well, he comes across as an interesting character from our side of the viewing. How is he?
He's going to kill me for this, but he's actually a pussycat.
Oh, really?
We were doing Shakespeare's Villains first. Oh, no, that's not true. First thing we did was a film called Decadence with Joan Collins. That was the first thing we did. Got on rather well, and I directed a bit of that. And then he asked me to direct him in Shakespeare's Villains, which we did at the Haymarket. And the first day, he did a piece, and he could have been a lot better. And I said, I don't think you hit it on that one. God, Nick, he came towards me, and his face literally went black. I mean, it was, and I thought, and what was going through my head was, well, he's going to kill me. But at least I'm producing the show as well, so the office will be able to carry on and get somebody else in. I wonder if the kids know where I am. All that. Yep. And he came right next to me like that and said, do you know, I haven't been directed by anyone for about 30 years. It's fun, isn't it? And that was it. He very deliberately puts on that very frightening front.
Right.
And he knows it very well, the effect it has.
Yeah.
But he is hysterically funny.
Oh, how wonderful.
A great lover of theatricalia and the business, and a bit of an Oscar Wilde expert.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How wonderful.
Quite extraordinary.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, having said that, that element that you saw as he strode towards you has also got him an awful lot of work, I would imagine.
Oh yes, I mean
because he's,
you know, he predates Ray Winston. It's that.
Yes.
I think every bloke would love to have Clint Eastwood's eyes, that ability to turn around, just look at someone, and they go, "Okay, fine, right," and walk away.
Yes.
Well, Berkoff's got that.
Yes.
And he trades off it, and he's got a lovely wife, and lives in a very, very beautiful house in Limehouse, and with an eclectic artistic taste. In fact, he bought a rather famous painting of Irving from my family. So he knows his stuff. And I noticed coming in today on the tube, there's a new ad for a film he's doing. There he is, centre of the photograph.
Yeah.
You know, anything. Clever guy. He's had that niche.
Yes.
For a very long
absolutely.
time. And
absolutely.
a terribly good actor.
Yes. Yeah.
A complete bloody lunatic, but a good actor. But he is inclined to suddenly go off on one.
Right.
And when we were at the Haymarket, oh dear, he wrote an article for the Evening Standard slagging off white British middle class theatre audiences. I went to see him and said, "Stephen, what's this for?" And he said, "Well, I thought it was quite interesting." I said, "Who do you think comes to the Haymarket? White British middle class theatre audience." And he went, "Oh."
Yeah. Couldn't possibly write an article like that when we're not trying to fill.
Yes.
Lovely. And I again, because I love Spike Milligan, you worked on Puckoon, which I always think was Spike Milligan's very own Ulysses. That must have been
with the best first line ever of Mulligan tripped, but fortunately the ground broke his fall, and you just know straight away you're in
where you're going.
Spike Milligan territory.
Yes.
It was hysterical, and working with Richard Attenborough was, well, he's a great hero. I think my two film heroes are Orson Welles and Richard Attenborough.
Right.
And to work with him was just a joy. It was a fabulous project. Did it work? I don't know. It was a cast to die for. If you look at the cast, like Griff Rhys-Jones, I can't remember, a lot of people.
I have seen it. It's a while since, but I can.
And a ridiculous cast. I mean, fantastic. But Milligan sadly was very, very ill during it. He was actually meant to be in it as a little joke.
Right.
But his daughter Jane was in it. But Milligan is a unique comedic talent.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think, I don't know about you, when I read it, I remember actually having to reread the original book.
Yes.
I remember rereading pages because I was laughing so much I had to start again.
It's like there's a particular piece I love, which it's got so much depth to it, and so that you have to read it and reread it and reread it because there's so much going on. And in fact, I shall go and find it on my bookshelves this evening. I know where it is, and I shall go and look back through it.
It was great fun. We did it in Belfast at a new studio called the Paint Hall Studios, which is now where Game of Thrones is done.
Oh, right.
And that's where they do it all. And we were the first film in to the Paint Hall. And it was enormous fun, but it was almost like a repertory at that point because virtually the entire team had come from a different film called The Brillcream Boys. And if ever you get, it sounds like a gay porn film, but actually it's not. It was to do with the RAF.
Right.
And could only happen in Ireland. If you get the chance to see it, do. This is a completely true story. When one of the flyboys, the British flyboys, came down in the Republic, they were interned for the duration.
Oh.
And if a German pilot came down, he too was interned for the duration.
Right.
Because the Republic was technically neutral.
Yes.
It being Ireland, they put them in the same camp. And so a natural divide occurred within the Curragh camp just outside Dublin. And yet again, they let the prisoners out on day passes to go and meet the girls and go to the races on the condition they gave their word to come back in the evening, which they did. And every so often there'd be what they call a home run, where one of them would escape, go to Belfast, over to Liverpool, down to London, go to Fortnum and Mason's, do the shopping, go to the War Ministry and hand themselves in, and they were immediately flown back. Because the Brits were terrified the Republic would come in on the other side.
Right.
So they were very honour bound to send them back. And this is what the film was about.
And they'd all head back with their Fortnum Mason's
with the
hampers. Oh, well, I shall go and look that up. How wonderful, how wonderful. And then I couldn't pass up the opportunity to discuss what might have been one of your first professional outings as I calculated, as a 14-year-old, as a teenager. So tell us a little about that.
Well, I wish it had been professional. That would have been very different. It started, I know what you're referring to, a school friend of mine's father worked for Apple. Not, as we know, Steve Jobs' Apple, but proper Apple.
Right.
That shows my age, doesn't it? Beatles
the Savile Row Apple.
The Beatles Apple. And one day I got a phone call. Was I doing anything on Thursday or whatever it was? No. Right, meet at the Savoy. Okay, so my brother and I went down, met at the Savoy, and we were all put into a coach. There were about 30 of us, I think, all put into a coach and driven off on a sort of magical mystery tour. Well, because my brother and I had been to Twickenham quite often, we knew that this was Twickenham Film Studios. So we got there into a big room, and there was a dais there, and we all stood around going, and the door opened, and in walked George Martin and said, hello, thank you all for coming, very kind of you. We got a band here who need a chorus, and we'd like you to do that. We all went. And he said, if you could just sign these waivers. Damn it, I signed it. And he went away, and we're all standing there going, I wonder what this is. And the doors opened, and in walked the Beatles. Now, this was the days of screaming, and this is the height of Beatlemania.
Yeah.
And we stood there in complete silence, going, it was in the presence of God.
Yeah.
And they came round and introduced themselves. I thought that was the sweetest thing. Hello, I'm George, I'm Paul, you know, and we're doing. And then they were doing Hey Jude, and we are the Na-Na chorus on Hey Jude. And they filmed it at the same time. I have to say, if you remember, Hey Jude is about 9.5 minutes long. And because we were filming it, they were doing about 14 minutes at each time.
Yeah.
And we did, I think we did 16 takes. I have to admit, it is now the only Beatles song I cannot bear.
Yeah.
It drives me bloody mad whenever I hear that song. I go, oh, not again. But our payment was a signed photograph of the Beatles, which was rather nice. So we took that home very happily. Jump forward many, many years later, and I'm having supper with my lawyer. And he looked at the photograph, which I've got framed, and he said, how'd you do that? And I told him the story that I've just told you. And he said, you signed a waiver? I said, mm-hmm. He said, have you got it? And I said, well, actually, it's stuck on the back of the photograph. And I showed it to him, and he went, how old were you? And I said, 14. He said, underage contract. And I thought, you don't sue the Beatles.
No.
Yeah, that's like suing God. It just doesn't happen.
Yes. But should you need to, the opportunities out there. I think that's wonderful. I love a story that starts, we had to meet at the Savoy. That's a good, you know a story is going to be good when it starts, we had to meet at the Savoy.
Well, the weirdest thing is I am great friends with Heather Mills, who's Paul's second wife. And we were talking about it. She'd seen the photograph, and she said, when was that? And I said, 67. And she went, I was 14 months old. And I went, I'll keep very quiet now.
Wonderful. Well, that's been great. Let's finish up with our three standard questions for today. So, What's your favourite tip, or what do you like to drink with a cigar?
Well, I don't drink alcohol very much.
Right.
Not for any reason. It's purely, I don't know if you know, there are the 4 stages of being drunk. There's charming, intelligent, bulletproof, and invisible. And I go straight to invisible. I have no nice middle period.
Right, right.
So I really don't get the enjoyment out of alcohol.
Yeah.
My father, Donald Sinden, was actually allergic to wine.
Oh, okay.
Very strange. He used to drink teachers, but he was allergic to wine. I'm not allergic to it. I just fall down very quickly.
Yes, yeah.
So I don't get that nice pleasure. If, however, I am drinking, I love Lafroig. I just love that peatiness, the fullness of it. Can be a bit of a distraction with a cigar because it's two varying flavors.
Yes.
And the other is Mount Gay Barbados rum, which I really love.
Yes.
Or Havana Gold. I'll go on either.
Lovely.
But Mount Gay is a lovely one.
And your favourite place to smoke a cigar? Where do you like to enjoy a cigar?
What an extraordinary question. Where? I suppose the terrace at the club at the Ivy is where I smoke most of my cigars.
Right.
I am at the club quite often. They have a wonderful heated terrace. I don't know if you've seen it.
No, I haven't been to the Ivy for a long time.
Really lovely, with heated marble seats, and very well done. So you can sit out there in all weathers, and they know me so well they'll bring me my coffee because I'm a latte drinker a lot. They'll bring me my coffee, and I'll just sit there with a paper and my cigars.
Wonderful.
So that's a particular favourite.
That's
the other is Café de Paris in Monte Carlo. And
lovely.
I sit outside there because I adore people watching. I go to Monaco a lot.
Right.
And I just love people watching. And you see the most idiotic sights. There was one time last year, I am in shorts and it's somewhat hot. And I am watching a woman in a full-length white fur coat get out of a Rolls Royce and go into Cartier. And I thought, one of us is wrong. I wonder which is wearing the right clothes. I mean, that was just absurd. But that's Monaco, and I adore it.
Yes, fantastic, fantastic. And finally, your most memorable cigar, the cigar that you can, there's one that you can remember
tipped me off on that
particularly.
one, and so I've been thinking about that, and I can tell you absolutely, it was an H. Upmann Churchill, and it was on my 60th birthday. And I kept this cigar for about 5 years, deliberately for that. And I think, was it the greatest cigar? I don't know. It was the most perfect situation.
Yes.
I was at a house in Kent. I had my family, my girlfriend, all the children were there. It was just perfect. And
Wonderful.
I had this cigar, and I brought it out with great pleasure and sat back and just went, this is the life.
Excellent. And it's nice. It's always nice when you've had a cigar for that amount of time and been looking forward to it, to actually find that it's every bit as good as you wanted it to be.
Because how awful would it have been if I'd lit it up and it's plugged or something like that?
Yes. So it was all meant to be.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, Marc, it's been wonderful. Thank you very much indeed for coming to see us.
Thank you.
And thank you for a lovely interview. Thank you very much.